أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تعبدون إلا الله وبالوالدين إحسانا صدق الله العلي العظيم. A very short part of this surah, this verse, a very popular verse talking about the respect of the parents. We talked about how respecting and keeping kindness and gaining your parents' satisfaction and happiness is of the most important responsibilities we as Muslims have. Peace and Allah, salawat ala Muhammad and wa ala Muhammad. The importance is to such an extent that whether they are Muslim or disbelievers, it is still wajib and is still obligatory upon the believer to respect their parents. We have also brought last night a story regarding how any prayer that is beneficial for the children, beneficial for the children of the parents is always accepted, with a story from the Prophet Musa alayhi salam and his companion. Now, respecting the parents is one of our obligations, is one of our responsibilities. Now, if one does not respect his parents, causes his parents sadness, dissatisfaction, unhappiness, this causes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take away His mercy and blessings from this person. Now, there are many different acts, many different things, many different characteristics that one might have, that one might show, that may cause the unhappiness of the parents. And one of the which is takabbur, istikbar. What is takabbur? Takabbur means that because of my actions, for my actions, and due to my behavior, I think of myself as better than others, better than everyone else. Now, as my dad has been talking about in these past couple of nights, a hadith which states 8 of the characteristics of a wise person. And one of them is a person that does not think of his actions as highly, does not think of his actions very highly, takes his actions as something very little, not important, not very significant. One of the reasons, the causes for someone to have this takabbur, to have istikbar, is when they count their actions and behavior as something very, very high, something very significant. Takabbur means to think of yourself as better than everyone else because of your actions and behavior. We see that sometimes nowadays with our young ones, they sometimes reject others, make fun of others, think of others as less because they think they're better than them. They think that I have this certain characteristic, I have this certain popularity, I have any right to make fun of this person, think of them as lowly, think of them as unimportant. Now, Imam Ali alayhi salam, in a hadith, he says that احذر الكبر فإنه رأس الطغيان ومعصية الرحمن. Stay away and be cautious of kibr, takabbur, for it is the cause and the beginning of the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden from someone. When I have takabbur, when I think of myself as better than everyone else, this causes me to falter and sway in my beliefs. Now, there are many different characteristics for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, and one of them is mutakabbir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is better than everything else. And this is a true characteristic, something that is definitely worthy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Us as human beings do not have the right to say that we are better than this person. We are more high status than this other person. Because nothing that we can do can reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no matter how great we think of ourselves, there is always one person that is better. And out of all of the creations, out of all the living things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most worthy of the title of mutakabbir, most worthy of being able to have takabbur. It is surprising for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to see that a creation who was so weak, who is so prone to being under different circumstances, different situations, to falter, to be weak, to die, many different things that might cause anything to the creation who is weak. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is surprised that us as creation, some of us may think of ourselves as better than others. Such surprise and such shock that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously, naturally, someone would think it's true. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of everything. So He Himself and only He has the right to have takabbur, to be able to think of Himself as the best of everyone else in this world. Now, we said that takabbur or istikbar is one of the worst traits and characteristics that one can have and show to their parents. And it's not only to the parents, but to everyone else. It's a very general characteristic. Imam Ali alayhi salam says that the ugliest and worst of characteristics is takabbur. So I can see that in this hadith, in this revelation, that Imam Ali alayhi salam states very generally, not specifically, but very generally, that takabbur and one seeing themselves higher than others is something that applies to everyone, not just the parents. This takabbur, this sign of dignity, high self-esteem in such a way that one sees others as low, is one of the ugliest and worst characteristics that a person can have. If we can see in almost all of the different books regarding akhlaq, regarding the morals that a Muslim has, they almost all of them have a part regarding takabbur, regarding this very ugly and bad characteristic. This characteristic has been so resented that even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not permit heaven to one who has even a tiny ounce of this characteristic. And a hadith from the Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says that لا يدخل الجنة من في قلبه مثقال حبة من خردل من كبر. A person who has the tiniest bit of takabbur or high self-esteem in their hearts, in their souls, they are not permitted to be able to enter heaven. Me as a believer, I have to understand that I am the most weakest creation in all of existence. You can even search it up on Google. What's the most weakest creation? What's the weakest creature? And it will say humans, us humans. The only thing that we have that stands out is our brains, is our intellect. But besides this, we are the weakest of all. So us, as the weakest creations, how can we even consider to think of ourselves better than anyone else if our physical characteristics are less of a bug or an insect? Me as a human being should not have the right, and do not have the right to be able to think of myself better than others. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one, the only person, the only being that is allowed and worthy of having this characteristic. This characteristic that anyone would have is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if someone has the tiniest bit of it, does not permit him to enter heaven. Now, there are some people that have this takabbur, that have this istikbar. But what's the reason? What's the cause? We said at the beginning that the cause is because someone takes and looks at their actions as something very significant. Yes, this is a cause, but what's the reason? The reason which causes someone to think of them as better than others. Psychologists have also reached this conclusion that the reason that some people might think of others as less is because they are hiding their own insecurities, is because they are hiding their own faults. When I take my actions and my behaviors as very significant, then I would like to hide everything that might make me feel weak, might make me feel less. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam himself also says this. He says, ما من أحد يتيه إلا من ذلة يجدها في نفسه. There is no person in this world that would have takabbur, would have this high self-esteem, unless there was a fault or very bad characteristic that would exist with them. We as human beings have lots of different faults, have lots of different weaknesses. And sometimes when we do not like this feeling of weakness, we try to hide it by showing ourselves as greater than what we actually are. By trying to hide what we truly are, by showing others that we are very great, we are better than them, and we have much more significance over them. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, another hadith similar to this meaning, he says that al-kibru an taghmis an-nas an tusaffaha al-haq. Takabbur, istikbar, is when someone hides the truth, is when someone shows a fake image of themselves and hides the truth that is actually regarding themselves. When I have takabbur, when I have high self-esteem in such a way that I think of others as less, the reason to this is because I want to hide what I have in myself, the weaknesses that I have in myself. Now, I'm not saying that every person should show their faults to everyone else. Of course, almost everything in this world should not have ifrad or tafrit, as we say in Farsi. They shouldn't be thinking too much, it's too much, or too less, but always keep it balanced. When I'm in front of others, I should take care of my dignity. I should watch over my dignity. But that doesn't mean to show myself in such a high way that I hide my faults, that I think of myself as better than everyone else, to have takabbur. But it doesn't mean that I should also keep myself in such a state, in such a low state, in such a weak spot that others think that they are better than me, that I look like nothing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala despises those who have takabbur and doesn't let them come to heaven. Now, we have went over the cause, and one of the reasons why takabbur might be caused. It's because someone wants to hide the faults that they have, and they are too scared and too they are so scared and they are so uncomfortable, and they cannot show their weakness in front of others. Weakness, of course, has a limit, as I've said. Everything should be balanced. But sometimes it might come upon someone that, okay, I notice that I have takabbur, I have this condition, I have this characteristic, but how do I get rid of it? There are many different cures, there are many different antidotes for someone to be able to get rid of this characteristic, which we'll be going in after the Salawat ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. One of the ways someone can get rid of these characteristics is to understand themselves. The reason why some of us might have this characteristic, might have this condition, is because we try to hide the faults that we have. We're not just to others, but to ourselves. One has to sit and start thinking, why do I think I'm better than others? Am I actually better than others? And start thinking of all the faults that they have. We humans are the most incomplete creations in all of existence. We have nothing complete. No creation is complete to begin with. So for me to be able to get rid of this characteristic, this condition, is for me to understand that I have all these faults and to think about them. And when I think about them, I can compare myself to the Creator. Why is that? It's because the only person worthy and capable of having takabbur is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only being capable and worthy of having takabbur is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I see that I'm so weak and I think of myself as better than others, I have to stop and think, why do I think I'm better than others? I have to count all the faults that I have. After I counted all the faults that I have, I should think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most perfect out of all of us. That He Himself is the only worthy being of having the characteristic of takabbur. Not even the Ahlul Bayt themselves have had takabbur. Not even themselves had think of others highly. Had think of themselves better than others, highly than others. This is one way. to take account the faults that I have, the weaknesses that I have. Another way is to do lots of ibadah. What does this mean? To do lots of prayers, to do lots of actions which cause closeness between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, not every action, but an action with hudur qalb. In a hadith from the lady Fatima Zahra, Hazrat Zahra, she says that فَجَعَلَ اللَّهُ الْإِيمَانَ تَطْهِيرًا لَكُم مِّنَ الشِّرْكِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given and placed religion for you as a boundary, as something that purificates you from shirk, from giving Allah any companions, from giving Allah any subordinates, teammates, from causing anyone to for Allah to be with, for putting anyone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This religion, that Islam that we have, we see that Christians, they believe in the Trinity. They place God and Prophet Isa alayhi salam as one. Though in Islam, Lady Fatima Zahra says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this religion to put a boundary between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and everything else in this world, that Allah is only one. And in the continuation, she says, وَالصَّلَاةَ تَنْزِيهًا لَكُمْ عَنِ الْكِبْرِ. And prayer for cleaning you and purifying you from takabbur, for cleaning you and purifying you from this high self-esteem that may let you think that you are better than others. Now, does this mean that I do prayers every single day? I remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I do this so many times, it'll get rid of my takabbur. It does, as Lady Fatima Zahra says. But with one condition on the side, that this has to be with hudur al-qalb. What does this mean? Hudur al-qalb means means when the heart is there, means the presence of the heart. Whenever I remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my prayers or in the adhkar, the different adhkar, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the best ways for me to be able to completely gain the benefits of this is to have hudur al-qalb, is to have the presence of my heart. What does this mean? That every single thing I say has to be with true feeling, with true emotion. Whenever I say, I mean it. In our prayers we say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Thanks and gratitude belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now when I think closely on this, what does this mean? This means that my thanking and my gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this itself is a blessing that belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Say and recite that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. He is one and there's no one else like Him. When I do my prayers and when I do my different actions in ibadah with hudurul qalb, with the presence of my heart, I can achieve this purification and riddance of takabbur. Now, we have all of these different very ugly characteristics that might come upon someone, and they're not something that one should be ashamed of. It's with everyone else, but it's something that they should be getting rid of, is qisawat qalb, is the hardness of the heart, is when someone's stone-hearted. Now, takabbur also is very important. It's one of the most dangerous characteristics, but there is one that's even more dangerous, qisawat al-qalb. What does this mean? It means that because of the different causes and effects, that different actions that cause closeness between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do not have an effect on my heart. Sometimes we see that in the different ceremonies, in the different places that uphold the remembrance of the Ahlul Bayt. For example, tonight, the Shahadat of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Some of us might not be able to really feel sad about this situation. Why can't we feel sad? Why can't we be affected by this grief? It's because of qisawat. And not only does qisawat cause us to not be affected by these different holy and spiritual causes, but it also may cause someone not to feel affected by the grief of others. For example, Palestine. There are so many people being there, tortured and hurt, but the people from Israel do not really feel anything. What is that? Because of qisawat. It's all because of qisawat. This qisawat is very dangerous, regarded as one of the most ugliest and worst characteristics, which we will be going over in the future nights, inshaAllah. I thank you for giving me your time. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin.